It's Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow, where daily we discuss the National Football League and the push for the postseason. In the AFC, plenty of teams trying to jockey for positioning. In the NFC, well, the best teams in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles and San Francisco 49ers.
Well, hold on, Hutton. Not just those teams, but how about the Detroit Lions is one of the best teams in the NFL? Other shows may not mention that or talk about it. We will.
We are on board with Detroit. Subscribe to the podcast. Join us each day for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the Outkick Network. We discuss the NFL, college football, and the top headlines from Outkick.com.
Bienvenidas al podcast Dos Bold Latinas. Aquí están sus hosts, Jatna Abreu
y Josibel Madera Vialet, dos latinas feministas born in Santo Domingo y en New York.
Passionate about Latina empowerment, Spanglish,
learning, growth, and so much more.
Hola, mujeres. There comes a point in your life where you have to take a step back and reflect on the things you have done so far. For Rosie and I, year 33 is the year in which we both realize that we have come a long way and have learned many things in life as Latinas that we really want to share with you all. It is definitely a long list, and I honestly don't think that is all of it. It's everything that we've done so far by any means. But we know there will be many more lessons and accomplishments as we get older and really continue to embrace who we are, regardless of what society and other people think about how we should be living our lives. So because it is a long list, we will go ahead and dive right in. And then, as I said before, there are things that we have learned, but also have accomplished, and things that we know now, and things that we should definitely have at this point in life in no particular order. So all of the things that we're going to cover is basically kind of like the lessons that we have learned for the past 33 years, as I mentioned before. But it's just a mixture of like just everything we've gone through as Latina women. And so we want to share that, and hopefully that helps you. And maybe you have a better understanding as to maybe what are some of the things that you, and will end up learning, and what are some of the things that at this point you have already learned that maybe it's on our list. And so hopefully you can take this to your advantage and, leverage as you see fit. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. Our number one is you can plan your life as much as you can or as much as you want, but God has the last word. And so we have learned, and personally, I have learned that there's really not a timeline for your life, because in reality, those things will probably not happen in the exact way you want them to happen. At the end of the day, not to say that you can't have a plan, like for sure, like I'm a planner and I will always have a plan. However, I think we have to always let it go. And, once you plan those things that you want, just give it to God and then let him have the last say, and let him, let things happen whenever he wants those things to happen. And know that you won't have a lot of control, and just trust God.
Hola, mujeres. Thank you so much for joining into this episode. Thank you, Jana, for starting us out with the thing that we many can't see, but we all believe in. And that is our drive. That's why we're here. And even while we're listening to this and having this podcast, everything. So just love it the way you kicked it off. Thank you. And then on my side, I'm going to start out with, this was the first thing that came to mind. And it's because maybe I've been talking a lot more lately, but it's how you are unique. And that is why wherever you are, you will make a difference. Like, it's taken me a lot to understand that. But then I look at how I sometimes, tú sabes, me echo las porras and say like, oh, look how cool I am. And I mean, sometimes, not all the times. And I never viewed myself that way, especially not in high school, especially not 10 years ago. And it's still a work in progress, but just want you to understand that any aspect in life, you are unique, and that's what the value that you bring to the table wherever you are.
And then the next lesson is not everyone will like you, and that's okay, girl. okay, you're not everybody's cup of tea. And so we spend so much time in our teens and our 20s era just trying to fit in. But at what cost? We have learned that when you no longer tie your self worth to what other people think, that's when you will truly thrive, essentially. So be okay with not being everyone's cup of tea. Be okay with not having everyone like you. At the end of the day, you will always have the people that you need the most and want to support you around you all the time. So just let it go. It's fine.
Yes. Okay. To add to that is growing up, I thought like everyone liked me and they were nice to me, but I never really understood. And I was always what's in it for them behind them. Era por alguna conveniencia that they showed que they liked you. But that's another thing. My second thing that came to mind was that by now, many of us, we may have made the choice or already been blessed to have kids and parents still alive. And, you're blessed to have both is plan a family vacation with parents, siblings, your siblings' family, and your family. And that comes to mind because the other day I was thinking of, oh my gosh, we never really get together like that. But have you noticed that when someone that's close to you passes away, people make that sacrifice, people forget about work, and people say go out of their way to go to that funeral. But why don't we do that once we're in vida? Like, why don't we do that once we're all here in this world together? And I'm saying that because in my family, we never thought we would be able to have a family vacation. I remember putting that on the vision board, and it came true in January 2022. And we all went, and my kids, my brother's kids, they all still talk about that. And the kids, they were able to learn so much. Like my niece was able to go for the first time. And it just really brings that different perspective and that cohesiveness into the family and just being more intentional on how we should be living life here while we're here, all here on earth still.
And then the other one is success comes in many forms. And so success obviously looks different to everybody, as everyone knows. But the sooner you can acknowledge and understand this, the faster you can start to define it in your own terms, essentially. So think about it. Is it having your dream job, right? Like, does that look successful to you? Is it making an X amount of money, right, in your life, in your career? Is it traveling the world? Is that something that, for you is successful? Or is it building a family, right? Like there's a lot of people that also, that's a dream come true and that's how they feel successful in their life and just building and having that, at the end of the day, having a family. So like, again, for everybody, it's just understanding like, what is it? What's your purpose? What do you want to accomplish out of life? And how does that looks to you as far as like success? And so it's just making sure that you understand that whatever is successful to you, however you seem to be successful, may look different to someone else.
Yes, indeed. It took me a while to understand that. Okay. Yo siempre miraba the grass of the other person, como dicen. Something else that comes to mind, Dana, is like, don't leave something for tomorrow which brings you joy, since the next day that might be what helps you to strive the next day. Like, sometimes it could be like, oh, I'm not going to eat that today, or I'm not going to watch that movie because it's late. But then, that feeling of gratification becomes more important for us to keep, like, that's what keeps us going. Because, like, I feel like the older I get, the least I get to experience things that bring me joy. And it's like more of those little things that become of like, oh my gosh, I did that yesterday. I'm excited to wake up today because as life gets hard, but we gotta start cherishing those small things. So it's like if you think of something small that brings you joy, just do it. Don't leave it for tomorrow.
Also, another thing we want to say here that we've learned is that your darkest trials and battles will indeed make you stronger. And we know that life is not all unicorns and rainbows, obviously. Like we all have had our fair share of, challenges in life. And every single one of those challenges has taught us something new about ourselves and just a different perspective on how to live our lives moving forward. So I know a lot of people say like, well, no, I learned how to be strong because I didn't have an option. But I truly think that once you go through, really difficult battles or situations, like you do get stronger. Like you learn so much from that next time something similar happens to you, you already remember how you managed the prior, battle and how you managed to overcome it. And so that helps you, do that the next time it happens again. So it does make you strong.
I feel like we planned these segues, John, now because next thing I have is La Paz sobre todo. And I wrote this as I think before I used to want to fight all the battles. Now I'm like, I'm choosing my battles since that is what I crave for the most is peace. And, the start of this year and the whole vision board theme, it was all of that, my mental peace.
Also, self-care is extremely important, especially when you have children. And we know, and you all know that that's our motto in this podcast, and how in our overarching goal, essentially, for everyone is to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. But we all have to take care of ourselves. But at the moment you become a mom and having all of the additional, hats to wear, warrants you to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, and we've said it before multiple times, and we're not going to cover this again, but if your cup is not full, it's really hard for you to be able to fill other people's cups. So you have to take care of yourself.
Otra cosa es que si otros pueden, porque yo no. And that has come in with the time to take learning to believe in myself. As before, I was starting it to be this super smart person to accomplish things. I compared myself to others like, oh no, I have to fit that criteria to accomplish XYZ. And now I look back and think like, wow, if I only had the mindset I have now, I could have had so many different outcomes to other things that I could have said I gave up on or I didn't pursue. So now it's just having that different mindset so I can learn to do so many other things that many others have accomplished too.
Also, there is no such thing as perfect. So we also had a conversation about this. Luckily, a lot of the things that we have on this list, we have already covered some in some shape or form in our previous podcast or episodes that we've had. So it's basically, this is just like a laundry list of the things that we've already told you before. And it's just reminding you like, these things, are important and you should be taking notes of those things, because moving forward is probably something that you're going to be able to relate to. So this right here is something that we actually had an episode on, but it's like, whatever you see on someone's social media isn't perfect. We don't know what they're going through in their actual lives, whatever they don't post. Not everyone, nobody will post what they're going through as far as like, hardships and things like that. You will only see the good. And so nobody, just understand that nobody, like, it looks perfect on that end, but it's really not the case. And nobody really has a perfect husband. Nobody has a perfect job. Nobody has a perfect home. And so I think that what we need to be measuring instead of like looking at perfect is progress. And progress is great, and good enough is great too. So I prefer progress over perfection any day.
Love it. It's like, focus on you, girl. Stop focusing on other stuff, porque that takes away so much peace, and you never really learn how to be happy with what you have. And I'm saying that from the heart because I hear from my husband that that's how I am, and it is true, because sometimes you're around people being like that and you think it's normal, but it's not. So speaking of focusing on you, and something else is like, now I pay attention more to what I do, like to my body, such as eating habits and sleep. Like I remember deja que tú llegues a los 30, tú vas a ver que tú no vas a comer todo ese disparate. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to listen to my body. Like, I remember 10 years ago, I was able to like eat at a steak and shake at midnight. Like now, just to think of it, I get like nauseous. So I can never, and like I was able to pull all-nighters and be just fine the next day. And now I can't even just to get things done. And now I can't even do that. If not the next day, I can't even function. So now it's just taking the time to listen to my body and just taking care more of myself intentionally.
The next thing is not to apologize for things outside of your control, for setting boundaries, for saying no when they expect you to say yes, and for taking time for yourself. These are things that I feel like we always hear as women growing up, that, you know, if you think about it, there are many women, right, that are always apologizing for things that are really never their fault. You know, these are things that are literally out of their control, but they're always taking the blame for it and apologizing for other people. And I also feel like it's okay to say no. I feel like also it's another thing, like as Latinas, because again, we've had a conversation about this before, like being the eldest Latina. That's one of the things that, right, influences the way some of us are. And so we are pushed to always have to say yes, because then we feel guilty and, you know, like, what are they going to say if I say no? But I feel like, you know, at this point in life, you just have to explain to anybody that, you know, set boundaries, and it's okay to say no. And it's okay to take time for yourself and do whatever it is that you need to focus on for yourself, girl.
Yes, like that. I have something similar, but more specific later on. But for now, I'm going to focus on something that really changes your perspective and appreciate more of your culture, or even when you're at your job or with your kids, just anything. You can even have just different conversation, and that's when you go abroad, or at least visit. And if you can't do that for certain circumstances, visit a state where you can get a different perspective from where you live. You know, maybe it's more diverse, or maybe it's not as diverse, but it's just very different to where you live. For example, like I studied abroad for 3 weeks in China, and I loved their humbleness and collectivism culture, and just maybe because it relates so much to how I am, but it really did give me appreciation to a different perspective on the culture, and just learning everything, and just it was just mind blowing. I could do a whole episode about this, but just want you to go out there and learn different things, and you'll see that you appreciate life more also, and just, yeah.
Then you should have a best friend who will celebrate you, but will also tell you when you're wrong. We have to make sure that we have this. I know, you know, growing up, we always tend to have like a lot of friends, multiple friends, but the older you get, the more you realize like the kind of people that you want to have around, and you will realize who will stick around to be with you and support you than the people that never really were your friends, essentially. But one thing to always think of is that your friend will always, you know, it's great. We have our friends that will celebrate us, and we want those that can support us. But we also want to make sure that they tell us how it is, right? Like, girl, no, that's not a good idea. And that gives you advice, and that you're not feeling some type of way after they give you the advice. I know, I mean, you know, I get it that sometimes, like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get criticism or tough feedback, but at the end of the day, a lot of times they're doing it because they care about you, essentially.
Yes, that's the mama friend. And I've always been referred as the mama friend. Not saying that Jana was referring all of that to me, but I know the feeling. The other thing that I would say, that this is how I've gotten hurt a lot, and it's just because I'm still naive to some extent, but I have learned to be less naive. Like, I never really noticed the intention someone had with me, either it was either good or bad. And growing up, for example, I always thought everyone had good intentions. And that's how I got so used to letting people into my life very easily. So just want to really put that out there. You really are you still have that naive mindset or you know someone, try to talk to them into perspectives because you'll avoid many hurdles in their life.
You should definitely have some sort of savings and some sort of plan for retirement. This is very important because coming from a Latino family, both of us, right? They never really teach you how important it is to plan for the future, and that a huge part of of this is having money set aside. And I learned a lot of that when I graduated from college and started making my own money and my own financial decisions. My parents really never focused on teaching me like all the financial, burdens and all the financial things that I needed to know. The only thing they would say, as Latinos, is like, oh, guarda pan pa mayo, right? Like ahorra dinero and just have it there and in case you need it. But they never really talked about like, oh, investing and like, 401k and like, when you have kids that you should probably help them, set aside money to college funds, right? To help them with college, because my parents never really, helped me with college like that. It was more like put on me. So these are things that we need to make sure that we are learning and teaching our children too as they grow up, so that they are better financially responsible than we are as millennials growing up.
Yes, indeed. I tried teaching my son, pero ya él dice of all the stuff he's gonna be able to buy with his online business, y esto lo otro. So it's also teaching them the reality of how to make that money so you can save it. That's my struggle right there. But anyways, and it comes to this because I'm pushing him to discover more of like what his passion is. And this is what I have written down is discover your passion to live a purpose-filled life. Porque it's like we're so taught to just, work hard and you gotta live a better life than I did, if we're thinking of how our parents used to speak to us. And then sometimes we never really pursue what we really want. We're just pursuing what our parents thought was good for us. And I wrote this down as I reflected on like the more and more I think of how I live to serve others, and I use it as a self-care way as it fills my heart. So now I'm starting to think of different ways. How can I start building who I am, my brand on serving others?
I also have on here, it may sound weird at first, but I think that everyone should, especially as a woman, you should have something that you purchase with your own money, like that is expensive, that you purchase with your own money for yourself, because you know that you deserve it, that you earned it, and it is something that usually you cherish for life, and you're always thinking about like, when I was this age, this cost this amount of money, and I purchased this because, as a reward for something. So I feel like it can be anything, but something that you invested in, that like you can say like, yep, I did that. I purchased that. And you know why I did it? Because I deserved it. So
I love it. I invested in something really expensive for myself, which I wonder what I would invest in myself by the time I'm 40. I keep looking at this as my reflection of 10 years. But anyways, the other one is to live on my own terms instead of the terms of the mamas, the tias, and my life set as an expectation. Like I always grew up like I have to respect them, even though I don't think this is right. And now I have learned that I'm not necessarily disrespecting them. I'm just noticing that I actually don't align with what I once knew to be the right thing. And I can start, just building upon what I think is right for myself and my family.
Manifestation and prayer are so, so powerful. So manifesting, which means exuding positive energy to attract a positive experience, essentially, of something you want in life, is so worth it. Also, just praying and spending time just talking to God and just allowing those things that are out of your control to be, just to hand it over to God and make sure that You just trust that those things will happen as long as you keep manifesting and thinking, and just believing in God. We are very, it's also for Rosie, like we're both very faithful and we trust and believe that God will do whatever he needs to do in our lives. And so I think that an additional thing to trusting God and letting him do his thing is just manifesting and making sure that, you're putting that positive energy out there. And I can guarantee you that if you're putting in the effort and you're putting in the work, and then additionally you're trusting God and manifesting, maybe those things will happen. At least it's been proven. For me, every time I do that, it ends up happening. Again, I make the plan, but at the end of the day, God decides when he wants to deliver.
Yep, he designs a timeline for sure, even though it's hard for us to understand. And speaking of manifestation, I'm like, this is segueing so perfect. This is something I was very vocal on, that I wanted to own property that I can generate income, something that's me, that. And recently I was able to give a down payment for something in DR, which I also was very vocal on where I wanted it to be. So this is especially, when we're speaking of generational wealth and having side hustles, this is something really that you could pass on to generation on having a rental income property.
Gossip may be fun, but it gets you nowhere. And I'm like honestly talking from someone that, like, we're Dominicans, and Dominicans said, and maybe that's like Latino, right, in general, because we tend to gossip, we tend to talk about other people or other people's experiences and situations without having any kind of background as to what we're talking about. So it may be fun. It may be fun at first, but gossip is toxic, and we have learned quickly that it will always come back to bite you. So not only are we risking someone else's reputation, but it also makes people not trust you. And I'm not going to lie, like I said before, as Latinas, this is a huge problem for some of us. And we probably learned that from our moms and grandmas. Let's just be honest. Con ellas nadie se salva y hablan hasta de sus propios hijos. Let's just put it out there. So we just have to be mindful about, doing those things. I know sometimes it can be fun, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't help anyone if we're just talking about other people.
Yep. And if you don't gossip doesn't get to you. Speaking from experience, porque a mí siempre la última que me llega el chisme. John, I would know stuff from my department I didn't even know. Anyways, it's something else that I have learned is bringing out the defensive side of me by standing up for myself and loved ones. Like I was just able to do that this week. I was very proud of myself and got something going. But like if I need to defend myself, I have learned not to care if I'm hurting the other person's feelings, since they have already essentially hurt mine or a loved ones. Like for me, I was always very scared of like, oh, I wouldn't like that to happen to me, or que me digan eso. But I'm like, I need to, like, I'm starting to have more of that mama bear come out of me, like even if it's not with just my kids, and I'm loving it.
So when they say it takes a village, it truly, really does take a village. In many aspects of our lives, we will never accomplish anything without the support of our village. It could be having kids, it could be having a job, it could be anything. But as long as you have those people, the right people, your family, your friends, like alongside you and supporting you and just providing that little bit of, just positive, giving you like those, just lending a hand and just like letting you know that they're there for you, and just literally with demonstrating with actions that they're there, it really helps, like in any aspect of our lives. So it does take a village.
Yes, indeed. I don't know where I would be without my village and having kids. And something else for me is learning to speak up. I always like confuse the whole we've talked about this, the whole confidence with imposter. And I'm learning that I am not an imposter. So by taking action for me has been is starting to speak up more and volunteering for opportunities which make me uncomfortable, especially in scenarios where I don't feel like I belong or that I fit the criteria of the person that should be doing that.
One of the other things we have on here is capturing the moments. So taking the photos, taking the pictures. It is so good to see memories from all stages of our lives. And even now, as a mom of two, just seeing how I have changed and how my children have changed, it's so heartwarming. And I will cherish those memories forever. Every time that a picture, a video pops up from a couple of years ago with my son, I always it brings back memories, and I just go back to that time, and I'm just like, oh wow, things change, and it's just so it feels so good, right, to just see that and then see where he's been before and then where he is now. It touches my heart.
Yes, it does. I love how my phone gives me all those memories and creates a little collage. I
Yes.
just love it. It's like I don't have it on my social media, but I'm so glad my phone does it for me. It truly is special. I gotta do a little Gmail for them to start emailing that to them.
Mhm.
And something else for me, guys, is I no longer try to make those sacrifices to make the other person's life easier when I haven't filled my needs. Like my natural senses of putting others before me, like it's a balance. I need to do that in a healthy way. So now I am progressing more on making myself a priority, which is nowhere near I was 10 years ago.
You should know when to try harder and when to walk away. That's it. That's the TED Talk. I'm just kidding. But yes, you should know when you need to try harder, girl. There are times in our lives that I feel like your gut will tell you this is something that I have to continue to pursue because it's gonna get me to this stage, to this place, to this point. It's gonna have this end result. Or I'm just gonna walk away because this doesn't serve me any purpose. And at the end of the day, I am okay whether or not I have this or not. So, girl, just understand that it's okay to know when you should push and keep pushing and going forward, and when to just be like, you know what, I'm out. Peace.
Bueno, se jodió la vaina cuando llegue ese momento. The other one is have a passion project or side hustle. Like this podcast is a living truth of it for me and Jatna. And also for me is other things I do with family businesses. Like it really helps you just feel more fun and aligned with the whole self-care, self-love thing that we also talk about all the time.
And the last one for me is we now understand why people say life begins at 30. And this, honestly, we feel what it means, or we felt what it means, but we really didn't know what it meant in actual words. So here's an explanation from a book we recently read, where some women in their 30s at the time share their own lessons learned. And it says 30s is when you stop the comparison. So the rat race that has you constantly looking over your shoulder to see how everyone else is doing at work, love, fitting into, your skinny jeans. It's tempting to see your 20s as your chance to make your mark. Thanks to this, you approach the end of your 20s, accomplished in many things, and at the end of the day, you're exhausted because you have been racing, against other people essentially in life. And then comes your 30s, and then now you reflect that life isn't a contest for beauty or popularity or otherwise. And there is happiness for all of us. At 30, most of us start noticing that the most meaningful moments in life so far have happened when we weren't really trying at all. And that kind of I felt that right there. I really felt that because I do remember in my 20s, I had a conversation with one of my mentors. And for some reason, I mentioned to her, like, and I don't know if it's like something that it was ingrained in me because my parents are very, strict about like, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you have to get a master's degree, you gotta, like you gotta marry at some point, you have to have kids. Like, I don't know, that's something that Latinos do a lot, and they like ingrain that in you. But we were having a conversation in my 20s, and then I mentioned, well, because she asked me a question. I was like, well, because I have to be able to accomplish this by this age. And I say, before I'm 30, I have to be successful, and like I have to have a master's degree. I have to at least be married. I have to at least have one child. And like all these things just started to like, I started to tell her like the list of things that I needed to accomplish by a certain age. And she was just like, but why? Like, you don't really have to do that. You don't, like, that doesn't really happen for everybody. Like you should be focusing on the things that you truly want to do now, like in the moment, rather than having to focus on like necessarily like the things that you need to have by this things accomplished by this age. And so I felt that. I really feel what she's saying there, because I, at one point in my life, I felt the same way. And I always felt like I needed to accomplish all these things before the age of 30. And then now I'm here in my early 30s, and I'm like, okay, so I've done all these things. And we actually had a conversation with Coach Marvelis. And that's the one that, she brought up the fact that we're always thinking about, okay, we want to get all these things done and we want to accomplish all these things. And now I'm here and I've done everything I said I wanted to do. And so now what's next, right? And I haven't really put the time and effort to think about, okay, so what's next for me? Like, what am I going to do in the next 3 to 5 years? That's something that I have yet to think about ever since I accomplished the things I wanted to accomplish by by my early 30s or end of my 20s. So yeah, it is interesting how our minds and how society pushes you to think, that you have to have certain things by a certain time frame, since a certain time frame in your life, and then you get there and then you're like, okay, but then now what? What am I going to do next?
Love it. We should just close it there, Jana. But if you guys are keeping count, I still got number 32 and 33. So déjame ya decirlo. So number 32, I had actually let go of things out of my control, which is a perfect segue to Jana's conversation and reflection, is dejar las cosas fluir. Todo tiene su propósito. Instead of getting anxiety over when something will happen. That's me. And I'm trying to let go of that, because if you have expressed what you want and need and took action, then yeah, deja las cosas fluir. And 33 is, had to close it out with this, with self-love. And esto es like, that's when it really hit me, was when my daughter was born. That's when I really understood what self-love is and started to work on it, especially understanding that my happiness comes from me and no one else.
Yes, girl.
Yeah, but me ha costado bastante. I wish I knew that 10 years ago. I keep bringing back the 10 years because I'm going to compare this to when I'm 43 or 40 para saber where I'm at. So now, mujeres, ahí están algunas cositas en la cual por lo menos 10 años atrás yo no tenía esa mentalidad, ni tampoco Jatna. So at whichever age you are, please, this is the homework to you. Take the time to reflect how much your mindset has changed from the past 10 years and celebrate your transformation. You have become a badass mujerón more and more every day, taking those small steps. And as a favor, if you're listening on the Spotify app, please in the episode notes, leave us a comment. Or if you're on the Apple Podcast, leave us a review. So thank you so much for tuning in. Abrazos y hasta la próxima. Chao.
Ciao.